We all know why bosses in video games exist, to finally give you a reason to use all your health potions and special weapons and grenades that you've been hoarding like an artillery-obsessed squirrel. Might still need it all later though. Better not risk it.
Oh, come on!
But some bosses can be defeated without you having to engage in the whole sordid business of actually having to have a fight. Here are 7 unforgettable times you could beat an intimidating boss without firing a shot. Enjoy, and beware spoilers ahead for the following games.
My fellow kindred, my apologies for disrupting any business or interfering with prior engagements you may have had this evening. It's unfortunate that the affair that gathers us together tonight is a troubling one.
Vampires are by their very nature rapacious monsters of the night who drain the blood of the innocent and wear velvet when it's not even Christmas. What we're saying is that vampires are scary and that they don't give a damn. Except, that is, when it comes to werewolves.
Need a ride?
Towards the end of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, you leave the bright lights of Los Angeles behind to visit the secluded Griffith Observatory, high in the hills outside the city. You're there for a secret meeting with your fellow vampire Nines Rodriguez, the leader of the city's Anarch faction.
Good to see you again, kid.
Things go sideways, however, when a suspicious fire flares up around the observatory and even brooding bad boy Nines starts to get nervy.
I didn't hide out here because it was a nice view. I did it because no one would come looking for me in these parts. This is werewolf country.
Well then, I don't want to play the blame game, Nines, but this is sort of on you.
Yeah, I'm scared of werewolves. 500 pounds of hair and claw. Guns are useless, and getting close is suicide.
It turns out that if vampires are scared of anything besides tanning beds, it's werewolves. And if they're scared of werewolves, you get the very strong impression that you, the player, ought to be also scared of werewolves.
It's leaving. Come on, kid, we gotta get inside that building until it comes back.
With Nines being crunched up by a werewolf off screen and the tram that is your only escape arriving in 4 minutes, so begins a boss fight that is much more boss than it is fight. The thing about this confrontation with a giant, long-limbed lycanthrope is that, like Nines said, getting up close is basically certain death. So your only hope is to outrun this werewolf as it chases you terrifyingly for 4 minutes until you can flee in the least cool getaway vehicle possible, which is to say a tram. Except there is actually one way you can defeat this feral boss, and it can be done without firing off a single one of your vampiric powers. If you reset the observatory power by throwing the switch on an outbuilding and then running back inside, you can then lure the werewolf up to the big sliding doors of the observatory, and you can then hit the button at just the right time to catch the werewolf in the sliding doors and fatally crush this boss, who we hope didn't have a human family waiting for them back at home. It's exactly like that bit in La La Land, only if Ryan Gosling were a werewolf and Emma Stone squished him in the sliding doors. La La Land won only 6 Oscars. Ask yourself why not 7?
The remake of the original Resident Evil introduced a bunch of new features, such as an expanded story, new enemies, and better voice acting.
What about you?
Oh, don't worry. I like the buddy system we have here.
I see.
I said better, I didn't say good. Anyway, in the time between the original Resident Evil's release in 1996 and the GameCube remake in 2002, Capcom had clearly hired a whole bunch of goths because the remake leaned into the spooky gothic horror angle hard. New areas of the mansion included a gloomy crypt and a spooky cabin in the woods, and new enemies included the horrifying Crimson Heads, zombies with red skin, super speed, and personal space issues. Most terrifying of all the new additions to the remake, however, was Lisa Trevor, who sounds like she wants to speak to your supervisor, but looks like she wants to eat your supervisor. Lisa was a young girl experimented on by Umbrella, as ever, in the hopes of creating the ultimate biological weapon. The result this time was Wailing Monstrosity who lives in a shack and wears dead women's faces as a mask, which you've got to think probably wasn't what the shareholders were hoping for. Still though, Lisa is super strong, practically invincible, and, it must be said justifiably, in a really bad mood. She's also standing between you and the way out of this nightmare horror mansion, so you're going to have to do something about that. The problem is, thanks to her mutations, she's practically invulnerable to gunfire, and this being a Resident Evil game, you're probably only carrying 3 bullets to begin with. However, you can beat this bastard-hard bioweapon without firing a single shot, by instead remembering the old Resident Evil motto, if in doubt, fiddle about. With a statue. Push these stone sculptures attached to chains off the ledges in Lisa's boss room and it'll cause the lid to come off this stone sarcophagus, which, conveniently, contains Lisa's mother's bones. There's probably something in the STAR's rules of engagement that prohibits bringing someone's mother's remains into the fight, but you can't argue it's not effective, as the sight of her mum's skull causes Lisa to stop fighting and then just yeet herself into a massive pit while cradling the creepy cranium. And there we go, tough boss fight done, and no more death than was absolutely necessary. Man, the shareholders are not going to be happy about this.
Alessa has been trapped in an endless nightmare from which she never awakens. He has been nurtured by that nightmare, waiting for the day to be born.
At the very end of Silent Hill, you face the boss known as the Incubus, a manifestation of the old god worshipped by Silent Hill's hard-working local cult.
Huh? What the?
The Incubus is a kind of gigantic, winged, horned, naked, goat-looking demon that makes or is accompanied by a constant tortured electronic screaming. Because frankly, it's the end of the game, and Silent Hill doesn't want to come away not having done every single thing in its power to upset you. Also, it shoots demonic lightning. Like I said, upsetting. As you might expect of a gigantic, winged, horned, naked, goat-looking demon that is the final boss of Silent Hill, this fight is as much a stern challenge as it is a terrifying ordeal. But for those of us who anticipate losing the ability to move and think, much less fire guns in the face of this ultimate terror, there is a blessed loophole. If you arrive at this final Silent Hill boss fight having completely run out of ammo, perhaps because you emptied it all into a convenient wall, who can say, then Silent Hill will notice the pitiful clicking of your various empty weapons. Here is where Silent Hill says, in an uncharacteristic act of generosity, don't worry friend, we've got you, because it doesn't want you stuck here for the rest of eternity unable to finish the game because you brought an empty gun. So Silent Hill silently kills off its final boss, and you ostensibly win said boss fight without firing a shot. That was great! I wonder if Resident Evil is so generous. No, is the answer.
Ceaseless Discharge is one of the most famous enemies in Dark Souls thanks to its name, which is less intimidating Dark Souls boss and more thing you furtively Google because you're too embarrassed to go to the doctor. And yet, Ceaseless Discharge is a real thing that someone named a boss in Dark Souls, and players who want to take it on can find it hanging out in the Demon Ruins, looking a lot like someone turned a crab upside down and set it on fire. CD is actually pretty chill and will only attack you if you attack it first, or if you loot the set of armor from a nearby corpse, like so. If you do either, you'd better be ready for a tough fight, because as you can see here, within 4 seconds of the boss fight starting, it's already knocked off 2/3 of our health with a single attack. Now, plenty of strategy guides online will tell you that the best tactic for fighting Ceasemaster D is to avoid his melee attack with a roll while being out of range of his fire breath so you can land a counter-attack. But as you can see from this footage, there is another way of doing things that involves a lot more running away. If you run back to the gate where you came in, this crabby lava boy will crab walk after you before, rather embarrassingly, absolutely stacking it on some pillars. All you have to do now is gently prod it in the hand it's using to hang on with, and Mr. C Discharge will go plummeting to its death in the lava-y depths below. And we barely had to lift a finger. Looks like your discharge just ceased. Nope, still sounds weird.
There's a Xeno in me. Shoot me, rookie. Don't let me die like...
The tagline to the movie Alien vs Predator was, "Whoever wins, we lose." It wasn't until we saw the movie that we realised "we" refers to the cinema-going audience, who all lost 115 minutes of their life.
What did you say this room was called?
Sacrificial chamber?
The Alien vs Predator games, on the other hand, have been pretty great. The first one pitted aliens, predators and colonial marines against each other and was the best shooter on the legendarily unsuccessful Atari Jaguar, which is a bit like being the best alpine skier on a remote desert island. 2010's rebooted Aliens vs Predator on the Xbox 360 and PS3 was the same idea, only prettier. Or uglier, depending on how you look at it. The Marine campaign doesn't hang around, dumping you straight into a colony overrun by aliens. And in only the second mission, Refinery, you face off against the most terrifying creature in the Aliens universe, namely the nightmarish Alien Queen. That's how they make Easter eggs too, you know. So you can send me yours. You probably don't want them anymore. The Queen is a fearsome boss monster, and you might reasonably worry that it's going to take nothing less than a nuke from orbit to defeat her. After all, she's about 3 times as tall as a normal alien and has more teeth than the Tooth Fairy. We do have a couple of bits of good news for you though. Firstly, the Alien Queen stays fixed in place, so she's not going to be spidering around the room chasing you. Secondly, a bit like your pet cat, Queenie has found the warmest, cosiest place to plonk herself, a giant industrial furnace.
She's camped over one of the smelting furnaces. She must like the heat or something.
Don't pretend your cat isn't also plotting your death. In any normal game, this would be the point where you unleash all of your firepower on her royal scariness, but in this boss encounter, you never actually fire a single shot at the Queen. You do, however, shoot literally everything else in the room. You'll shoot eggs. You'll shoot facehuggers. You'll shoot regular aliens. You'll even shoot the 2 explosive canisters beside the Alien Queen. But you resolutely won't shoot the Queen herself. Instead, you have to wait until it's time to ignite the furnace and cook this terrifying horror beast once and for all by pulling this lever.
Burn the place down!
No, I said pull the lever. Easy mistake to make. You might want to show that footage to your cat, you know, just in case it gets any ideas.
With its widespread critical acclaim, dark, washed-out colour palette, and heavy emphasis on murdering dogs, id Software's Quake was pretty much the Last of Us 2 of its day. As a first-person shooter, the gameplay of Quake was pretty straightforward. Step 1, shoot anything that moves until it stops moving. There is no step 2. This tried-and-true method will carry you through almost the entirety of Quake as you face off against the otherworldly nightmares that make up this game's roster of boss monsters, from the spider-like Vor to the Yeti-like Shambler, who can absorb an entire hardware store's worth of ammunition before finally going down. Having bested all these behemoths, you're probably wondering to yourself what Quake has in store as its final boss. Cthulhu? 100 dogs? Some kind of robot spider with John Romero's head? Wrong on all counts, sadly, because Quake's final boss is this Lovecraftian nightmare who looks a bit like someone asked H.R. Geiger to design a salad fork. For once, shooting something over and over again is no help here because it has a staggering 40,000 hit points. For reference, the double hard shambler, who we just used all our ammo on, had 600 hit points. Instead, the key to defeating this boss lies in the spiked ball that's patrolling its boss room. Helpfully, there's a teleporter on the other side of this room that will teleport you to wherever the spiked ball is at the time. All you need to do is wait until the ball passes through the boss, then jump in the teleporter, which could go one of two ways. Either we end up in its tummy being digested for all eternity, or the universe realizes that two objects can't occupy the same space, and it explodes. Let's watch. Okay, that's a relief. Let's touch and go there for a second. Hey, Quake guy, cheer up, you won! I was probably thinking about all those dogs he killed.
Never one for subtlety in his character names, Metal Gear Solid creator Hideo Kojima named each of the Cobra Unit's bosses in Metal Gear Solid 3 after the primary emotion they represent on the battlefield.
My friends, let us fight together again.
There's the Fury, who in his rage wants to set fire to the world.
I am the Fury! The flames of my rage will incinerate you.
Then there's the Pain, who fires stinging hornets at you. And there's the Fear, who strikes fear into your heart by just sort of moving like a spider.
For you to feel the fear!
Don't pretend like that's not enough. Bruh. It's the Sorrow who is arguably the most interesting of these bosses. This member of Cobra Unit feels a deep sorrow on the battlefield owing to all the death he witnesses around him.
Sad. So sad.
If he hates death so much, why does he try so hard to kill me?
Battle brings death. Death brings sorrow.
In Metal Gear Solid 3, the Sorrow is actually already dead and a ghost, which is usually the end point of a boss fight, not the start. The fact that he has no corporeal form is the obvious reason that unloading the entirety of your ammunition supply into him is not going to be an effective strategy. Instead of a stand-up fight, you find yourself wading through an endless river somewhere in the afterlife, while the Sorrow breakdances creepily in front of you. For a dead guy, he's got some moves. In a neat twist, the encounter gets tougher depending on how many soldiers you killed in the rest of the game up until this point. Every single enemy you oft comes up to you and tries to touch you with its weird spooky ghost fingers, reducing your health. Man, I should have killed some good guys too to help me out here. Or at least an evil barista so I could get a coffee. This is taking forever. Survive this slow, plodding gauntlet and dodge the Sorrow's ghost tentacles for long enough and you'll eventually reach the Sorrow himself, for what you would assume would be the climactic final battle with this troublesome apparition. Only it turns out that you don't now get a tense battle to gradually whittle down the Sorrow's energy bar. You don't even grab a Bible and perform some sort of field exorcism QTE. The way you finally get rid of the Sorrow for good and escape this purgatory once and for all is that he screams at you and you die? How is it not this guy who's called the Fear?
Not a fitting death at all.
No, I remember. The spider thing. However, contrary to appearances, you have actually won this boss battle, in that Snake is not dead, because you have a revival pill, and that's the last we see of the Sorrow in the game. Just do remember to take the revival pill, yeah?
Thanks so much for watching this video about hard bosses you can beat without firing a single shot, but if you've got any suggestions of your own for favourites that we missed, do let us know in the comments. And if you want to watch more videos from Outside Xbox and Outside Extra, then why not check out our Oxventure D&D campaign. We're running campaigns every 2 weeks at the moment. They're a lot of fun. I think you'll enjoy it if you like D&D, or if you want to see us play Werewolf with the team from Dicebreaker, the tabletop gaming website, then you can check that out on Outside Extra as well. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.